Have you ever found yourself lying still in the dark, your body ready for rest, but your mind is not? It's that moment when the silence of the night seems only to make the noise inside more piercing, an unending storm of overthinking. You rewind the day's conversations, dissect every choice, worry about a future that hasn't even happened, and wrestle with the very meaning of your life. You long for the moment when your mind finally settles, when you can truly find a peaceful sleep. But that peace always seems to slip away. We're pulled into a spiral of anxiety with no way out, a perpetual battle with our own thoughts. But what if the fight for calm isn't a fight that needs to be fought? What if the key isn't forcing the mind to be quiet, but giving it a different language to understand? What if, instead of chasing the complex solutions of the modern age, we returned to a wisdom that has endured for centuries? A classical insight that teaches us to lay down the impossible burden of control, to trust the natural flow of all things, and to courageously create meaning even within chaos. This is not an exercise in emptying the mind. This is an invitation to fill it with a different kind of light, an invitation to replace the spiral of anxiety with a deep, steady inner serenity. Today, we begin a journey together to explore philosophy for a peaceful night's sleep. This is not a single system of thought, but a distillation of the deepest insights from many great traditions of wisdom, both Eastern and Western. We will learn how to set down the burden of control, a central lesson of Stoicism. We will discover how to trust the natural flow of all things through the lens of Taoism, and uncover the unparalleled beauty hidden within imperfection itself. And finally, we will courageously face the biggest question of all: how to craft meaning for ourselves in a seemingly indifferent universe, a core inquiry of existentialist philosophy. Why does this journey matter so urgently right now? Because in the modern world, we are paying an enormous price for speed and perfection. We are programmed to muscle through, to optimize every minute, to chase an idealized version of life that never truly exists. We are trapped in the grind of more than 35,000 decisions every single day, worn down by an always online culture that erases the boundary between work and life. The result is a silent epidemic of exhaustion, chronic overthinking, and a profound sense of disconnection from ourselves. In the midst of this, these ancient philosophies, seemingly belonging to the past, have become more relevant than ever. They are not lofty theories removed from reality. They are the antidote to the spiritual burnout of our age. In this video, we won't stop at theory. Together, we will examine the core principles that helped the great emperor Marcus Aurelius find tranquility in the heart of brutal battle. We will walk through Taoism's timeless parables to truly understand Wu Wei, the art of action without force. We will explore why honoring the cracks is the key to freeing ourselves from the pressure of perfection. And most importantly, we will discover how you can begin applying this wisdom today, from how you face a failure, to how you love, to how you find stillness before you fall asleep. This is the journey back to an unbeatable mindset, not by conquering the outer world, but by understanding and mastering yourself. To truly grasp the power of these ideas, we have to return to their roots, not as dry theories, but as humanity's vital responses to the most extreme pressures of history. Our journey begins not in one, but in many great civilizations. In ancient Rome, amid the chaos of war and political intrigue, we find Marcus Aurelius. He did not write Meditations in a quiet study. He wrote it in military tents, facing plague and betrayal. These are the private notes of a philosopher-emperor, striving to cultivate virtue and inner calm while the world around him was falling apart. Alongside him stands Seneca, a wealthy statesman who distilled the essence of Stoic practice in letters to Lucilius, practical, mind-training counsel for a friend, even as he navigated the reign of the tyrant Nero. Stoicism was born from an urgent need for self-discipline to protect the fortress within. At the same time, in another corner of the world, ancient China witnessed the rise of Taoism. In the turmoil of the Warring States period, Laozi did not seek to confront or control reality. Instead, he proposed a path aligned with nature, Wu Wei, the art of action without forcing. His philosophy, recorded in the Tao Te Ching, is not passivity, but a deep understanding of the fundamental principle running through all things, seeking the balance of yin and yang and the strength found in softness, as Bruce Lee would later express. Be water. Continuing the Eastern stream, in Japan, rooted in Zen and the art of the tea ceremony, the philosophy of Wabi-Sabi emerged. It is an aesthetic that exalts simplicity, authenticity, and impermanence. It finds perfect beauty in imperfection itself, in the cracks, in the marks of time. A quiet rebellion against glitter and false perfection. And then, thousands of years later, in a Europe scarred by 2 world wars, existentialist philosophy arose. As old value systems collapsed, humanity was thrust into isolation and absurdity. Thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, in Being and Nothingness, declared that existence precedes essence. We are condemned to be free, to define ourselves through choice. Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, stared directly at the universe's absurdity, yet called for a resilient revolt, to imagine Sisyphus happy. This landscape was prepared by predecessors like Kierkegaard, and especially Nietzsche's philosophy, which dared to proclaim God is dead, and challenged us to create values for ourselves. From Rome's battlefields, to the harmony of Taoism, to Japan's imperfect beauty, to Europe's existential courage, all of these legacies equip us with diverse tools to face the timeless question: how do we live a life that is meaningful and serene? The first and perhaps most foundational principle on the journey back to inner calm is the art of letting go of the burden of control. This is not an act of weakness or passive surrender. It is an act of supreme strength and wisdom. It arises from the profound convergence of 2 great philosophical streams, Western Stoicism and Eastern Taoism. First, let's look through the lens of Stoicism. This principle is defined most clearly by sages like Marcus Aurelius. At its core is a sharp delineation, a truth that feels almost ruthless yet is deeply liberating: the dichotomy of control. This philosophy points out that, within the vast universe, there is only a small territory over which we truly hold sovereignty: our mind, our judgments, our choices, and our responses. Everything else, the actions of others, our health, reputation, the outcome of a project, the past, the future, lies beyond absolute control. Why does this truth matter so much? because, as the Stoics observed, nearly all human suffering does not come from events themselves, but from our mistaken perceptions and our attachment to outcomes. We don't suffer because it rains. We suffer because we believe it should not rain on our picnic day. We are exhausted not because of the work itself, but because we cling to a specific result, like a promotion. Forgetting it depends on countless external factors. We are trying to bend reality to fit our expectations, and that futile fight wears us down. It is the direct source of chronic overthinking, as the mind sprints to predict and control a future that cannot be controlled. Marcus Aurelius, in his Reflections, reminded himself of this. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You have power over your mind, not over external events. Recognize this, and you will find strength. Letting go, in Stoicism, therefore, is the courageous act of accepting what is beyond reach. It frees the mind from the burden of carrying the whole world. It permits us to dwell fully in the present, the only moment in which we truly have the power to act. But if Stoicism teaches us to accept reality, Taoism elevates this letting go to a more subtle plane. In Taoism, letting go is not only acceptance, it is trust. This is a profound shift in perception. Taoism sees the universe as a great current, a foundational principle called the Tao, the thread that runs through all things, yet resists easy description. Everything is unfolding to a perfect natural rhythm, just as a seed knows how to sprout, as a river knows its way to the sea. Letting go here is not passivity. It is the relinquishing of crude, heavy-handed interference. It is a deep trust that things are happening as they need to. When we let go in this way, we relax our rigid judgments and expectations. We stop labeling events as good or bad, success or failure. Instead, we learn to find purpose within the very flow itself. This is the essence of Wu Wei, the art of acting with the current, without forcing. It is when we stop muscling through and allow solutions to surface on their own, once the mind is no longer compelled. We trust the process, trusting that everything has its right timing. Therefore, the art of letting go is a dual principle. It is the Roman soldier's iron discipline to focus only on what he can control, and at the same time the Taoist sage's water-like suppleness, trusting the natural course of life. It is a deep form of detachment. You still act, you still give your best, but you are no longer chained to a single outcome. And this letting go goes further still. It is not only letting go of control over external events, it is also wo truk, loosening our grip on what we cling to, material things, rigid beliefs, and most dangerously, our very ego. We unbind ourselves from external identities to return to inner freedom. This principle is the cornerstone, because only when we learn to release the burden of control can we truly begin the journey back to tranquility. Only when the hand is no longer clenched can we receive what life is truly bringing. So what does letting go of the burden of control and trusting the flow actually look like in real life? Taoist wisdom gives us a classic parable, the story of the old farmer and the horse, often called maybe so. Imagine an old farmer living in a small village. One day, his only horse ran away. The neighbors came to commiserate. "What terrible bad luck." The farmer calmly replied, "Maybe so." A few days later, the horse returned, and not only that, it brought back a whole herd of wild horses. The neighbors rushed over to celebrate. "What amazing good fortune!" The farmer replied again, "Maybe so." Some time after, the farmer's son, while trying to tame one of the wild horses, fell and broke his leg. The neighbors sighed, "What a disaster!" And once more, the farmer said, "Maybe so." Not long after, the king's army came through the village to conscript all the able-bodied young men for war. They saw the farmer's son with a broken leg and left him behind. This story captures the essence of letting go. The farmer is not passive. He still acts. He still tends the horses, still cares for his son. But he completely abandons the habit of labeling events as good or bad, luck or misfortune. He understands that the chain of cause and effect in life is far too complex for the finite human mind to judge. He does not cling to a single outcome. He simply moves with the unfolding. He practices a form of absolute detachment. We see this pattern echoed in modern life. Consider Sarah, a project manager who lives in a constant state of extreme stress. She tries to control every tiny detail, checks email every 5 minutes, and stays up all night drafting contingency plans for every possible risk scenario. She is muscling through. The result is burnout. And ironically, her projects run into more issues because her team feels stifled. When she finally hits bottom, Sarah begins to practice Wu Wei. She learns to trust her team's capabilities, sets clear goals, and then steps back, allowing the system to run. She stops trying to force outcomes, and something remarkable happens. When she stops controlling, creativity and performance blossom. At the other extreme, we have Stoicism's most compelling proof, the life of Marcus Aurelius himself. Picture him, the most powerful emperor in the world, sitting in a sparse tent on a freezing battlefield. He faces relentless war, a devastating plague sweeping the population, and even betrayal from his closest generals. He cannot control any of it. He cannot command the plague to stop, cannot compel the enemy to surrender, cannot change the past. The only thing he can control is his response, and he chooses. Every morning he sits and writes, not to issue orders, but to admonish himself. He practices accepting a brutal reality and focuses on his virtues: courage, justice, temperance. This is the warrior's letting go of the illusion that he can change what lies outside, to concentrate all his power on mastering the inner fortress. Or take a more vivid image from martial arts legend Bruce Lee. His "be water" philosophy is the perfect fusion of Taoist Wu Wei and Stoic pragmatism. Be water, my friend. Water can flow, or it can crash. Water never tries to fight the rock. It doesn't muscle through to smash the obstacle. It is soft, adaptable, taking the shape of a cup or teapot. When needed, it slips through the tiniest crack, or gathers to become an unstoppable force. That is acting with the current, without forcing. Finally, even Steve Jobs, a symbol of control and fierce vision, had to learn the lesson of letting go in the hardest way. Being fired from the very company he founded was something he could not control. Only after letting go of resentment, letting go of the identity label founder of Apple, did he find the freedom to create Next and Pixar, and eventually return to rescue Apple. Sometimes, releasing fear and ego is the only path back to yourself. If the first principle teaches us to let go of the burden of control over the outer world, then the second core principle leads us into an even deeper confrontation: the art of honoring imperfect beauty and authenticity. We must acknowledge a truth. The most ruthless tyrant is often not our circumstances, but our illusion of perfection. We live in an age that worships polish. From meticulously curated images on social media to the pressure to have a perfect career, a perfect family, a perfect body, we're haunted by an ideal that does not exist. Perfection, as the outline has made clear, is an illusion, and this futile chase is one of the greatest sources of spiritual exhaustion, endless comparison, and the infinite loop of overthinking. We constantly dissect our shortcomings, tormenting ourselves over the cracks we work so hard to hide. But what if those very cracks are where true beauty lives? This is where we turn to one of the East's most delicate aesthetics, Wabi-Sabi. Rooted deeply in Zen Buddhism and the Japanese tea ceremony, Wabi-Sabi is a worldview, an art of living that elevates three pillars: simplicity, authenticity, and impermanence. It completely inverts our definition of beauty. Wabi-Sabi does not seek beauty in perfect symmetry or flashy newness. It finds beauty in the marks of time, in the wear of an object that has been loved and used for many years. It honors the story the object carries: a chipped bowl, a moss-covered wall, a wrinkle at the corner of an eye, all hold a depth of beauty that sterile perfection can never touch. Why is this revolutionary for our minds? Because it transforms how we see ourselves. As the outline emphasized, Wabi-Sabi teaches that a scratch is not a flaw. It is evidence of life. A crack is not something to conceal. It is what tells our true story. When we apply this lens to our lives, the pressure to be perfect dissolves immediately. We no longer have to muscle our way into becoming someone else. We are allowed to be ourselves, right here, right now, TT. Embracing this imperfection allows us to rest, a natural, deep, and honest rest. We stop comparing our work-in-progress selves to other people's edited final cuts. Anxiety lowers, and, ironically, our resilience rises. Because when we accept impermanence and imperfection as essential parts of beauty, we stop fearing change or failure. We see them as parts of the process. This acceptance opens an even deeper door, the door to authenticity. The great psychologist Carl Jung devoted his life to individuation, the journey of becoming our whole unified self. According to Jung, we cannot become whole if we accept only the good, perfect parts of ourselves. We must bravely face and integrate the parts we reject, the realm he called the shadow. This shadow work is, in essence, a psychological form of wabi-sabi. It is the act of looking at the cracks in the soul, fear, shame, anger, and no longer seeing them as enemies, but as essential parts of our one-of-a-kind story. Authenticity is not perfection. Authenticity is wholeness. Therefore, this second core principle invites us to end the war against reality. It invites us to look at our imperfections with compassion and to find strength not in hiding them, but in acknowledging them. That is the path to freeing ourselves from judgment and finding a profound peace within our truest selves. Look at the Japanese art of kintsugi. When a precious ceramic bowl breaks, the artisan does not throw it away. More importantly, they don't try to glue the cracks to hide them, to pretend it never broke. No, they do the opposite, something extraordinary. They carefully gather each shard and mend them with a precious lacquer mixed with pure gold. The result is a new creation. The cracks do not disappear. On the contrary, they are highlighted, becoming the most valuable detail, a lattice of shimmering gold lines across the ceramic. The bowl is not only repaired, it becomes stronger, utterly unique, and far more deeply beautiful. It is beautiful because it was once broken. The crack has become its history, its story. So it is with our soul. How much time and energy have we spent trying to hide our own cracks? The failures, the wounds, the wrong decisions, the parts of our personality we consider weak or shameful. We treat them as flaws, as proof of imperfection, and we do everything we can to cover them up, to present a flawless surface. The philosophy of Wabi-Sabi, and alongside it, Carl Jung's process of shadow work, invites us to do the opposite. They invite us to bravely face those broken pieces. They invite us to gild our cracks, turning them into part of the authentic self we are proud of. We are not defective products. We are kintsugi artworks. The very hardships, stumbles, and pains that seem to break us are what create depth, empathy, and a resilient strength found nowhere else. Consider another example from Wabi-Sabi's nature aesthetics, a Japanese garden. It does not follow the rigid symmetry of a French garden. It is intentionally designed asymmetrically. Its beauty lies in natural harmony, not perfect control. A moss-covered stone is valued more than a gleaming slab of marble. A naturally growing, gnarled branch is seen as more beautiful than a row of evenly pruned trees. What does this teach us? It teaches us to see beauty in the present that is not yet complete. We stop trying to prune our lives to match a perfect photo on social media, and begin to cherish the mossy, time-worn beauty of our real journey. Practicing Wabi-Sabi in everyday life starts with very small things. It's when you look at a favorite chipped mug, and, instead of irritation, you feel warmth because it has accompanied you through so many mornings. It's when you accept a plan that goes off-beat without panicking. It's when you write a journal page and allow yourself to put down messy, honest thoughts instead of forcing a perfect sentence. It's the act of living simply, paring down objects and non-essential schedules so you can see what truly matters. Embracing this imperfection has a profoundly liberating effect. It directly dissolves the pressure of perfection. It helps us stop comparing, stop worrying, and simply live. Live authentically and deeply, right within our own beautiful imperfection. We have learned how to let go through the wisdom of Taoism and Stoicism. We have learned to honor the cracks in the spirit of Wabi-Sabi. But now, our journey enters a thornier territory, an existential beam that pierces straight into the core of existence. This is where we must face the third principle, the courage to create meaning in an indifferent universe. If the previous philosophies offer comfort and acceptance, existentialism throws us into a stark truth. It begins with the largest questions. the ones that often echo in the stillness of night. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the meaning of all this? And the answer existentialism first presents can be dizzying. The universe is inherently indifferent. There is no grand script written in advance for you. There is no ultimate purpose assigned to you from the outside. This is the context that gave birth to this current of thought. It was gestated by forerunners like Kierkegaard, who emphasized the importance of subjective choice, and especially Nietzsche's philosophy, which boldly proclaimed the death of God and challenged human beings to become the creators of their own values. It truly exploded after the 2 world wars, when humanity witnessed the collapse of traditional value systems and was thrust into a profound sense of absurdity and isolation. At the heart of existentialism lie 3 pillars: freedom, responsibility, and choice. Jean-Paul Sartre, one of the greatest existentialist philosophers, encapsulated this in a classic proposition: existence precedes essence. What does that mean? Most other things have an essence before they exist. A hammer is made with the purpose, essence, of driving nails. But human beings are not like that. We exist first. We are thrown into this world, and only afterward, through our own choices and actions, do we define our essence. Sartre says we are condemned to be free. This is a burden, because it means we must take full responsibility for who we become. There is no one else to blame, not circumstances, not family, not fate. When we evade this freedom, when we pretend I have no other choice, or that's just how I am, Sartre calls it bad faith, an act of self-deception to avoid responsibility. In his seminal work, Being and Nothingness, he describes human consciousness as a nothingness, an open space of possibilities that we ourselves must fill. Another crucial voice is Albert Camus. If Sartre focuses on freedom, Camus focuses on the absurd. The absurd, for Camus, is the clash, the irreconcilable divorce, between humanity's fierce hunger for meaning, order, and reason, and a silent, meaningless, irrational universe. So, faced with the absurd, what should we do? Suicide? Camus says no. Believe in a hollow hope? Also no. His answer is revolt. This revolt is illustrated perfectly in the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus is condemned by the gods to push a boulder up a mountain, only to have it roll back down near the top, an eternal, meaningless task. But Camus asks us to imagine Sisyphus happy. Why? Because Sisyphus is conscious of his fate. He knows what he does is absurd, and precisely in that awareness, in his scorn for that fate, he discovers his freedom. His happiness is found in the struggle itself. The struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. Camus's revolt, then, is to keep living, keep loving, keep creating. In spite of the universe's absurdity, we keep pushing our boulder. At first glance, this principle may sound grim, but in truth it is an incomparable source of strength. It tells us, do not wait for someone to hand you meaning. Meaning is not something found. It is something made. It is crafted through each deliberate action, each courageous choice, each sincere commitment. It invites us to live bravely with eyes wide open, to embrace the unknown. And precisely in the act of creating meaning for ourselves, we discover a truer peace, not the peace of escape, but the peace of an unbeatable mindset, a mind that has stared into the abyss and chosen to live. So, how do we imagine Sisyphus happy? This isn't just a literary image, it's a psychological practice. Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, paints the ultimate punishment of meaninglessness. Sisyphus is condemned to push a boulder up a mountain forever, only to watch it roll back down and then start all over again. It is a completely futile task. We, the observers, look at it and see hell, but Camus offers a radical whisper. Il faut imaginer Sisyphe heureux. Why? Because in the moment Sisyphus walks down the mountain to begin again, he is fully conscious of his fate. He harbors no empty hope that the boulder will stay at the top. He does not deceive himself. He stares straight into the absurdity of his life. And in that raw awareness, in his scorn for the gods who punished him, he finds his freedom. He becomes stronger than his fate. His happiness does not come from the outcome, which he cannot control, but from the struggle itself, from his very act of revolt. The struggle itself is enough to fill his heart. We see another, perhaps even thornier illustration in Camus's The Stranger. The protagonist, Meursault, lives a life of indifference. He seems to feel nothing. He does not cry at his mother's funeral, does not truly love, and commits an act of violence without a clear reason. Society condemns him not for the act alone, but because he refuses to play the emotional game society demands. Only when facing imminent death in his cell does Meursault awaken. He recognizes the gentle indifference of the world. He understands that the universe does not care about him, and in that truth he finds a strange peace. He sees that he has been happy, and he is ready to live the same life again. He has lived truthfully within his own absurdity, rather than living a meaningful lie. So how do we, the modern-day Sisyphuses, push our boulder each day? Consider one of life's biggest choices: career, relationships, or lifestyle. Jean-Paul Sartre calls the evasion of choice bad faith. A person living in bad faith says, "I have to do this job because of family pressure," or "I have to stay in this relationship because I'm afraid of being alone." They pretend they have no choice, that they are victims of circumstance. They are avoiding their freedom. The person who lives courageously in the existential spirit does the opposite. They take full responsibility. They say, "I choose this work, even though it's hard, because it aligns with the values I have created," or "I choose to end this relationship, despite the pain, because it is no longer authentic." This is where the meaning of failure is completely redefined. Through the existential lens, failure is not the universe's verdict that you are not good enough. The universe is indifferent. Failure is simply an event, raw data. You are the one who decides its meaning. You can choose to see it as a dead-end wall, or you can choose to see it as raw material for creating a new meaning. Life's purpose, therefore, is not a hidden treasure you must find. Purpose is a fortress you must build, brick by brick, choice by choice, even knowing that one day it all may crumble. Fulfillment, inner peace, comes from the building itself. So, how do we actually live these great philosophies? We've traveled through the letting go of Stoicism and Taoism, learned to honor the imperfect cracks of Wabi-Sabi, and bravely faced the bare freedom of existentialism. But how do we weave all these principles into a life dominated by speed, by the pressure of 35,000 decisions a day, and by an always online culture that wears us down to exhaustion? The answer isn't a complicated formula, it's a change of rhythm. The answer is the art of slow living. This is the take-home section, a practical system, a necessary counterpoint to our high-speed era. Slow living doesn't mean doing less or becoming lazy. It's a conscious rebellion against the belief that faster is always better. It's the art of living more, deeper, and more connected. It's about prioritizing quality over quantity, practicing presence, mindfulness, returning to simplicity, and nurturing genuine connection with yourself, with others, and with nature. Its roots, unsurprisingly, lie in the intersection of Zen, Taoism, Stoicism, and thinkers like Thoreau. So, where do we begin? First, we start with the smallest steps, by reclaiming our time. Try adding just 15 minutes of quiet to your morning. Instead of grabbing your phone, spend that moment practicing mindfulness, feeling your breath. This is the simplest letting go technique, letting go of haste to return to the present. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, reminds us with striking clarity that time is the only wealth we truly own. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. We often squander time carelessly." The first practice is to become conscious of where you are spending your time. Practice digital detox intentionally. Create screen-free hours or spaces in your home. Schedule a day, or even just a few hours, of complete disconnection from the virtual world to reconnect with the real one. This is a crucial act of boundary setting in the modern era. Next, bring wabi-sabi and simplicity into your environment. Declutter not only your belongings but also your mind. Taoist principle is clear. The fewer our cravings, the more presence we have. Look at what you own. Instead of constantly buying new things, learn to repair and care for the items that are meaningful. This is the act of honoring the cracks, honoring the story of time. Each morning, practice gratitude. Instead of beginning with a to-do list, begin by acknowledging the privilege of being alive, just as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself. Keep a gratitude journal, or simply capture a small moment of beauty each day. That is Wabi-Sabi in action. And when facing difficult emotions, instead of denying them or being drowned by them, practice self-compassion and acceptance. This is Carl Jung's shadow work applied. Remember John, who was consumed by resentment. Only when he began meditating, observing his emotions without judgment, could he let go of that burden and find freedom. Most importantly, apply these philosophies to the two biggest domains of life, failure and love. Through the existential lens, when you face failure at work, stop treating it as a verdict. Remember, the universe is indifferent. Failure is raw data. You are the one who crafts its meaning. Take responsibility. Instead of living in bad faith and blaming circumstances, ask, what do I choose to learn from this? Who do I choose to become after this? This is where you transform failure into material for meaning, turning the obstacle into the way, just as the Stoics teach. And in love, we must move beyond the shallow romantic expectations of the digital age. Erich Fromm is clear. Love is an art. a skill to be cultivated, not a spontaneous emotion. It requires 4 elements: care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. In a world of abundant options and transactional communication, we must practice love as a conscious act. That means being truly present, listening deeply, respecting the other's differences, and, most importantly, practicing healthy self-love. Because you cannot give what you do not have. Of course, we must acknowledge a reality: slow living. And these practices can be seen as a privilege. Not everyone can easily reduce work hours or move to a quiet countryside. But the answer to this critique is to make it more inclusive. This is not an all-or-nothing revolution. It's a shift that begins with the smallest steps. Start with 15 minutes of quiet. Start with 1 phone-free meal. Start with 1 deliberate deep breath. This is the journey of cultivating self-discipline, not as self-punishment, but as a discipline born of compassion. Its benefits are priceless: a clearer, more creative mind, reduced stress, lower blood pressure, and deeper relationships. By practicing letting go, honoring imperfection, and courageously creating, we are step-by-step building an unbeatable mindset, a mind that is calm, resilient, and free. Of course, the path we've just charted, a journey through Stoicism, Taoism, Wabi-Sabi, and existentialist philosophy, is not a cure-all, and it's not without its challenges. A common criticism, especially aimed at the letting go of Taoism and Stoicism, is whether they encourage passivity, resignation, or even a cold emotional suppression. Does acceptance mean giving up on efforts to improve the world? And does detachment from outcomes make us insensitive to the real injustices unfolding around us? This is a profoundly important misunderstanding. As we've seen, Wu Wei is not inaction. It is the art of acting without forcing, in harmony with the flow. Stoicism is not the absence of emotion. It is the art of not being ruled by emotion. Tranquility is not indifference. It is the clarity of a mind unclouded by fear or empty expectations. Another practical challenge, as we've touched on, is feasibility. Is slow living a luxurious privilege, a romantic ideal not everyone can pursue, especially those struggling daily under the weight of making a living? The answer lies in inclusivity. Slow need not be an all-or-nothing revolution. It can begin with the smallest steps: 15 quiet minutes in the morning, 1 phone-free meal. And perhaps the greatest challenge comes from existentialism. The truth that the universe is indifferent and that we are condemned to be free can be a psychological burden too heavy for some, leading to existential anxiety rather than liberation. Yet, it is precisely by looking straight into that absurd abyss that we find the most urgent reason to craft meaning for ourselves. This is not a philosophy of despair. It is a philosophy of courage. Of course, the path we've just charted, a journey through Stoicism, Taoism, Wabi-Sabi, and existentialist philosophy, is not a cure-all, and it's not without its challenges. A common criticism, especially aimed at the letting go of Taoism and Stoicism, is whether they encourage passivity, resignation, or even a cold emotional suppression. Does acceptance mean giving up on efforts to improve the world? And does detachment from outcomes make us insensitive to the real injustices unfolding around us? This is a profoundly important misunderstanding. As we've seen, Wu Wei is not inaction. It is the art of acting without forcing, in harmony with the flow. Stoicism is not the absence of emotion. It is the art of not being ruled by emotion. Tranquility is not indifference. It is the clarity of a mind unclouded by fear or empty expectations. Another practical challenge, as we've touched on, is feasibility. Is slow living a luxurious privilege, a romantic ideal not everyone can pursue, especially those struggling daily under the weight of making a living? The answer lies in inclusivity. Slow need not be an all-or-nothing revolution. It can begin with the smallest steps: 15 quiet minutes in the morning, 1 phone-free meal. And perhaps the greatest challenge comes from existentialism. The truth that the universe is indifferent and that we are condemned to be free can be a psychological burden too heavy for some, leading to existential anxiety rather than liberation. Yet, it is precisely by looking straight into that absurd abyss that we find the most urgent reason to craft meaning for ourselves. This is not a philosophy of despair. It is a philosophy of courage. Through this journey of exploring philosophy for a peaceful night's sleep, we've traveled across many landscapes of wisdom. We learned the art of letting go, of the burden of control from Stoicism, and the natural ease of Taoism. We found deep comfort and authentic beauty in the very imperfection of Wabi-Sabi, and recognized the urgency of slow living as a counterpoint to a frantic age. We faced with courage the freedom and responsibility of self-created meaning in existentialist philosophy. And finally, we discovered that love, as Erich Fromm teaches, is not a random emotion, but an art that requires conscious practice. As we've seen, all these great paths, despite their different origins, converge on a common point: a call to live awake, to live simply, to live deliberately, and most importantly, to live a compassionate life. The journey back to inner calm is not a final destination, but a daily practice of choice. You have the power to shape how you respond to the world, even when you cannot control that world. Tonight, as you lie down instead of battling your thoughts, which principle will you choose to practice? What will you choose to let go of or to honor? Remember, a truly peaceful sleep is not the result of an empty mind, but the result of a mind that has bravely understood, accepted, and found meaning within its own imperfect life. Our exploration of philosophy for a peaceful night's sleep pauses here. I hope you've found an anchor, whether it's the Stoic art of laying down the burden of control or the authentic beauty within Wabi-Sabi's imperfection. Remember, inner peace is not a distant destination. It's a choice you can practice every day. If you feel a deep connection with these ideas and want to continue exploring the mind, please follow and support the journey. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications now, because we'll be going even deeper into the most powerful tools for building an unshakable inner life.